Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Dada Step, and have a very amazing woman who's gonna talk something that we quite ignore, but it's quite necessary for communication. Is something that I've realized as women in the STEM spaces, we have a hard time. We have all this knowledge, but how to communicate knowledge and information is quite a task for us. So today we have Yvonne, who is a beautiful speaker. She's a soft skills. She is a high performance coach. She's just the person for us to help us through communication. So Yvonne, introduce yourself and take us through the communications topic.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for that introduction. Hi, beautiful ladies. My name is Yvonne Okeyo. I'm a motivational speaker. I'm very passionate about helping people to reach their full potential through trainings, motivation, coaching, and enhancement. And I'm so glad that we are doing this with you ladies. And I hope that you're going to have as much fun as possible.
Yeah. So Yvonne, you can take over communication. Yeah, take us through the communication topic.
Okay, that's thank you. Communication is something very wide. In fact, if somebody invites you to ever speak about communication, you don't know which part to speak about because communication is very wide. We are born, time we die, communication is the one thing that we do throughout our lives. We learn, we cry when we want something from the time we are born and until the time our light goes. Communication is part and parcel of us. So if you ask me to define communication, then I would define communication as saying what you mean, meaning what you say, without being mean in how you say it. It is the process of saying what you mean, meaning what you say, but you are not being mean in how you put it across. So that would be my perfect definition of communication. Because oftentimes when people communicate, we're always communicating so that we can be heard. We're always communicating so that we can make that person feel either less or more superior to us. But I think if we put our whatever we want to say across respectfully and we mean what we say and we become so wise in how we say it, then we already have taken things.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. How would you describe because communication? I trust is both positive and negative because you can actually communicate negative way. So how would you describe a good or effective communication?
The most important thing in communication is not even what we are saying. It is how we say things. And for me, effective communication means putting your thoughts across very respectfully, being mindful of the recipient or the recipients. And at the same time, it also ensures that your intention, when you're communicating, your intention is of being understood, pure intentions. So that is what I would call effective communication. Because when most people communicate, they usually communicate what they're feeling at that moment. But if your intentions are pure and if you learn how to communicate, then I think then it will be effective. Because even if you want to say something negative and you put it in a very positive way, there's that sandwich method of communication. Positive, then say what to say, negative, and then you sandwich with the positive again. So you can tell somebody, for example, if somebody is really irritating you, a good example of where sandwich will be applicable is you say, I really appreciate the fact that you're an amazing and very clear in how you speak. However, I think when you say it becomes a little bit hurtful. I would really wish you can say it in a very more polite way. But at the end of the day, you are still amazing and you are still a wonderful person. So you have started with appreciating this person. And then however when you put however, that means now you want to put the negative statement and then you sandwich it with another positive. So usually what happens to the human mind is we remember the positive more than the negative. So when I sit down and I'll remember the positive words you spoke, in that moment of solitude or silence, then I will remember, okay, so this is what she was trying to put across. So it's very important for people to communicate effectively by being pure in their intentions. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. At least the communication sandwich. Thank you for that. Yvonne, to add, I understand there are C's in effective communication. I don't know what these C's are.
Okay. Communication is very broad, like I said. There's the verbal communication, there's the non-verbal communication, there's so much types of communication. There's even the digital, or we call it the soft communication, where it happens through phones, emails, and so on. So the 7 C's of communications are just principles to guide people to know how to communicate effectively. These principles were founded by different people. There are so many different how do you call it, explanations to why these C's exist. But the bottom line is that the people who invented the C's of communication had the same objective. They wanted people to communicate effectively. So the first C of, there are 7 C's of communication. So the first C is be coherent. Coherency is simply be clear in what you're saying. And that is why I say that if your intention is pure, then you will communicate effectively. So be very coherent in what you're saying. Understand what you're saying. And make sure that the person who you are sending this information to is also understanding what you're saying, not what you think they should be understanding. So be very coherent in how you communicate your thoughts across. The second thing is be don't sugarcoat what you're, don't say, I'm not happy. Just go to straight to the point and say, I'm feeling low or I'm feeling sad. Stop sugarcoating your feelings stop negating your feelings at any time you're communicating. Always say, I'm not happy, I'm not satisfied. Don't say, I wish I was much full. So what are you trying to say? So it's always advisable never to negate statements or sentiments when you're communicating. The third thing is, the third C of communication is correct. Be very correct in how you communicate. And this was invented because there are times when there's communication that is happening between me and the receiver, and we're using another person to pass this information. So when you're using a human being to pass an information to another human being, there's so many chances that this communication will be broken, or this person will only say what they feel or what they think they understood. So that is where the correctness, so that is where the correctness comes in. So it's very important to ensure that whatever you are, be corrective. Like, for example, if you want to go and say that, I need you to go and buy 50 cartons of milk. Be very clear, use correct language and say, go and buy 50 cartons of milk. Don't go and say, I'll go and buy a lot. You see, a lot is so relative, and it's so, like, there's no number that a lot symbolizes. So be very correct in how you communicate to avoid miscommunication and to avoid the back and forth movement. Okay? No, that is the fourth C is be concise. It's even written in the good book of life that when you say so many words, you are likely to say something stupid or silly in it. So I think concise is just be short, just go straight to the point. Don't say so many things. Don't start with, for example, let's take a relationship setup where you're trying to communicate your feelings and you're trying to say, you, ever since you started working for me, you have broken the window sills, you have done so much harm to my business, you have done so much. Just go straight to the point and say, this particular moment, I find you ineffective because you've done ABC. So if you communicate your points with a lot of clarity and you go straight to the point, then you're going to ensure that you achieve maximum effectiveness in how we communicate to people. Are we together? The fifth is
yes.
The fifth C of communication is completeness. And completeness simply means don't send half information. When you give half information, then there's a communication breakdown, or there's going to be a miscommunication with the recipient. Or at the end of the day, you want ensure that communication so it's very say what you mean what you say, but don't say it mean. So courtesy simply means put yourself in the shoe of the recipient. How would you receive this message? How would you want that message to be sent to you? So that courtesy will help you to restructure your words in your head well, to structure them well before you speak, and to even understand how would this person feel if I said ABCD. So it's very important to always, before you speak, always just take a moment of silence and just write the message in your head. Assume you're the receiver and receive that message the way you sent it. Then continue sending it in your head until you feel it's not insulting or abusive. And secondly, it's not very harsh. So courtesy is very important, not just in how we communicate verbally, but even in how we communicate electronically and how we communicate with our body. Because there's also the electronic communication that includes emails, phones. So if somebody calls you on the phone and you're always rude, or you send messages and the tone is very rude, then there's less effectiveness that will be achieved during your communication. So and then the final C of communication is concrete. Concrete is just something that has weight and something that is complete. So always make sure that whenever you are communicating, make sure that what you're saying is understandable, complete, and all that stuff. So once you have all these 7 C's of communication at your fingertips as a STEM, as a lady in STEM, or in just you want to apply it in any aspect of your life, then you're going to achieve effectiveness in how you communicate at all sectors of your life, be it in your business or even social life.
Perfect, perfect. And I have another question, Yvonne, that how should we communicate? At times, I'm supposed to talk to you and look at you, and the other person tells me, stop staring at me. You see, how am I supposed to look at you? How am I supposed to position my arms? How am I supposed to sit down? You know, I sit down and raise my legs up. So, how am I supposed to communicate these body languages? How are they important? And what are some of the body languages that you actually recommend?
Okay, so during communication, non-verbal communication includes the body language, makes around 65% of communication. So somebody will read your attitude, your tone, your face, your body before they read what you want to tell them. So non-verbal communication is a large part of communication. And again, when I talk about non-verbal, I mean how you look like on your face, how you stand, how you talk when you're how you even speak when you're trying to communicate something. So the reason why some people think they're being stared at is because somebody just looks at you so rudely. In their mind, what is happening in their mind and what is happening in their heart is just completely like so stormy. So they're just looking at you like, okay, can you finish what you're saying? I want to go. They're not listening. But eye contact means when I look at you when I'm talking to you, it means eye contact means I'm giving attention and I have time for you. Other than staring, another common thing that happens with the eyes, especially, is if I'm talking to you and you're busy on your phone, you're busy writing, or you're busy sideways, you're not giving me so much attention as the speaker. That also sends a message either rude or you're not interested in what somebody's saying. So the standard, the only thing that is accepted in communication is give eye contact, but don't stare too much. There's an eye contact that you can give that makes the speaker feel uncomfortable, and there's that kind that you give, and so do everything in moderation. That's what I always tell people. If you're giving contact, give eye contact for a minute, and then you can either look sideways or just look down and then look back at the speaker. It makes the speaker feel that we're in this together. But if you just stare from the time I start speaking to the time I finish speaking, then it sends a message that you're either rude or not interested. Now that is for the eye. The same applies to the facial expression. How you receive a message can either say whether you are interested or not interested. So always good to just have a pleasant face. I may not have like a specific definition of a pleasant face, but what I can say is at all points, if you're the receiver or if you're the communicator, always switch positions. Assume that, okay, if I was the recipient, how would I want to be looked at? Okay, so you wouldn't want to stare, you wouldn't want to appear rude, you want to appear interested in what this person is saying. Understand? So it's very important for you to always, for you to achieve effectiveness in any of this communication, then you have to always put yourself in the shoes of the recipient or of the messenger or of the sender. Yeah. Another thing that is very common, especially for women, communication is our body language. We know what we want, but then when we're given the platform to ask for what we want, we start shying off, or we start feeling like I'm unworthy or something. So having a very firm and stable posture or body language is very important, because again, it shows that one, you are mature in how you think and in how you present yourself. And secondly, it shows that you know what you want, you're going for what you want. But if you're given the platform to ask and then you start twitching your body, right, like a teenager who's still trying to learn like you don't know what you really want, then it sends a message that either you are not ready for what you're asking for, especially if you're in a networking event, or you have gone to ask for tenders, or even for a training opportunity, or just something that you're going to sell your product or service, and you're just there presenting yourself shabbily. Then people will think either you don't know what you're asking for, or you're not ready to receive what you really want. So it's very important to have a very firm, and firm posture does not mean being so rigid, just standing next to the wall like somebody who's been rained on, you're trembling. It means just being confident and ease. You stand with ease but with confidence. You just let your body relax. You don't become so tense. Someone again will think either you're a beginner or you don't know what you really want in what you're asking. Okay. Yes. Another important factor of non-verbal communication is how do you greet people, either with your hands, especially, okay, now there's COVID, so there's very limited handshake, but assuming you're going to meet somebody who you feel like you need to give a handshake, then your handshake should be very firm. Your thumb and the thumb should be interlocked. Like, I don't know whether you can see, like your thumb and the thumb of the person should be interlocked. Then make sure you give a very firm handshake. If you give a very sluggish handshake, then it shows that you're either, okay, handshakes has a lot of meaning. If somebody gives you a very sluggish handshake, it's either they are not interested in greeting you, or they're very shy or weak people. There's another type of handshake that suggests that you want something other than business. Either you want to be seduced or you want to be, So there are different messages that handshakes put across when you're greeting somebody. So it's always good to give a firm handshake and look at the person in the eye when you're doing that handshake. That way it makes the person feel like, hey, this is a very confident person and they know what they're going after. But if you're giving a handshake and you're playing with your hair or you're looking down, you're sending a complete different message from what you're meant to send. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Yvonne, for that. I actually didn't know some of these things about the handshake and how to go about things. Thank you so much for that, because actually most of the times we are given opportunities to ask, but how to bring out the ask and it's clear, like, this is what I want, and for you to be able to capture attention, it takes quite a lot. So I think if we follow some of these skills, we are really able to do much.
Yeah. So, and again, in communication, when you're, sorry.
It's okay, continue.
And again, if you always want to be effective in how you communicate, there's a skill that I teach managers when I'm doing my training, communication training. It's called backtracking. So backtracking simply means, if I ask you, Kawira, tell me about how did you come about with this brilliant idea of STEM and having Zoom meetings for STEM women? You understand? So before I answer, I have to use the exact words that you have used when asking me that question. Oh, Kawira, tell me about this wonderful idea of STEM. So when you use backtracking as a way of communication, then it means that, one, you want to be very sure that you've got the exact tone and the exact atmosphere that person was asking you that question, and you want to use the same tone to respond. So backtracking is very important, because in fact, backtracking is now, I think, the in thing to use in communication. Before you respond, always repeat what that person has told you exactly in your head, and then digest it, then you respond. You understand? Yeah. So that is also another another very important skill of effective communication. Yeah.
I have another question, Yvonne. When we go out there and maybe you talk to someone and they tell you, write to me that on mail. Probably you wanted to discuss an idea. You have this amazing idea that you want to implement. Maybe it's a project you want to implement, and coincidentally you've gone to these networking events. You are working on something about electricity, and maybe you meet the manager for KPLC there. And then now you're trying to speak to them, but they really don't have enough time. So they give you their card and they tell you, write to me on email. How do I go about that? Do I just go direct to the point? Do I introduce, or how do I start that conversation on email?
Okay, fine. So there are two things. There's the conversation at the networking event, which we're going to talk about, I think, next. And then there's now the electronic communication. Now, when assuming you've gone to this event, you've already networked, and you've done all the basics at the networking event. Now you have this person's contact. So the first advisable thing is when you're talking to somebody on email, send that email 2 days after you have met that person. That is the standard recommended duration to give that person. Because let's say you met them on Friday at an event, and then they're not working. So send that email on Monday, or you met them on Monday, and Mondays are very busy usually for people in the office. So you give them Monday and Tuesday, then you send the email on Wednesday. And the recommended time to send an email is between 9 to 10 a.m. That is when now most people, because 7 and 8 people are still praying, organizing themselves and all that stuff in the office. Then from 9 and 10, then somebody can now easily see your email, or up to 11. And then maybe they can respond at midday or before close of business. So it's very important to have those two factors in mind. Send the email 2 days after you meet that person, and send the email at between 9 to 10 a.m. If you go further, let's make it up to 11 a.m. That is the standard accepted professional time of sending an email. Don't send work emails at night or very early in the morning at 6 or 7. The high chances of somebody missing these emails. So communicating electronically is very important aspect of communication. We send messages through phones, through SMS, we send messages through email, we send messages through different methods. So the first thing when you're sending a professional email is make your subject line very clear. The subject of this email should be very, very clear. Okay, you can say application for maybe funding by KPLC, or partnership proposal by KPLC, or you have to be very objective in the kind of subject to give your email. The second thing you need to do when you're communicating on email is be very clear in what you're asking. Be very, very clear in what you're asking in that email. Don't just go and start story and say, oh, by the way, I really liked your hair really looks amazing. Where did you buy that hair? That is something you can do over the phone. But if you're doing it on email, be very objective. Why are you writing this email? So tell them, again, salute that person. And when you're doing the salutation, be very, use full words. Don't use hi or hey, okay? You just say, hello, Mr. So-and-so, or hello, Miss Kawira. My name is Yvonne. We met at a networking event 2 days ago. I'm so impressed by what you're doing with the organization, and I'm so impressed with what you're doing for the young people, or whatever kind of business that person is engaged in. Then say, following our conversation, this is a follow-up email on what we talked about. Then now state what you had talked about in that meeting, and state what you're asking for. So be very clear, have a very clear tagline, have a very clear objective. Make sure your salutations are in full. Don't use any abbreviation at all. Don't use don't, they are, write full statements, okay? And then also another thing is, use correct font. That is another important thing when you're communicating on email. Use the correct font. The standard recommended font is Times New Roman, and maybe Calibri, something. But Times New Roman font 12 is the most common for emails, unless otherwise. That is the most common font, and it's the one that is advisable. And then the next thing is, if you have met,
hello, I can hear you, Yvonne.
Okay, okay. I saw a notification that, okay, so let me continue. So another thing is when you're sending an email that has an attachment, make sure that you name your attachment correctly. So let's say, for example, you're sending the STEM proposal, just write it STEM proposal. Or you're sending attachments of your company registration or company profile. Make sure you name all your attachments very correctly. Don't write document 1, document 2, document 3. It won't make me to want to open it because I don't know what that document contains. And if it's named document 1, 2, 3, I will get tired opening all of them to find what I'm looking for. So if you're sending your company profile, you're sending a proposal, you're sending a quotation, always make sure that your attachments are well and labeled and well named so that the recipient knows what they're working with. The other thing is when you're writing an email, always remind that person because maybe they probably met 20 people in that event. So you can tell them, my name is Brenda. We met at a networking event 2 days ago at Kempinski and ABCD. So always ensure that you quote where you met that person and probably how you got to their contact. Say, oh, thank you so much for sharing your card. I'm so excited to have you as a connection. Always just be as as I said again, put yourself in the receiver's shoe. Always like, how would you want that email to be written to you? So be that. Be the receiver and then use that kind of approach and tone that you'd like that person to use to you. And another thing, when you're writing an email to somebody you met in a networking event, let's say you are the marketing manager of STEM organization, and I am the CEO of the STEM organization. And you met somebody who is the director of Kenyan Power, right? So if you want to write this person an email, this conversation should be between you and him or her. And it has to be very clear and say, oh, thank you, sir, madam, sir, I met you, blah, blah, blah. So if you want me to know that you're communicating with this person on behalf of our company, there's the two, okay, when you're sending an email, there's the recipient address where you write to, kawira@gmail.com. And then there's the place for CC. CC now is where you copy that, you can copy your manager or you can copy other people in that email. And then there's another point called the BCC, blind copy. So if you're sending an email to an outsider and you want me to know that you're sending an email to an outsider, then you use the BCC part, blind copy. And the reason why you use the blind copy is because you don't want to put so much pressure on him or her to respond to your email. And they also don't want to know, they also don't want other people to know their email address without their consent. And that is why we use the BCC part. So it's always very good to hide any other recipient who is important but not so important in that particular conversation in the BCC segment. So if you're sending an email, always have that in mind, because if you send an email to the MD of Kenya Power and you copy the MD of your company, then either you don't trust that they will respond or they just feel that their privacy has already been invaded. Okay, so that's another point that you want to consider when you're sending an email. And finally, before you click that send button, always reread what you have written. Ensure that your punctuation is correct, no abbreviation. You have been courteous in your tone, you have been kind in your words, and just don't write things like hey or hi. Always use the standard greeting, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or hello. Hello is also acceptable. Don't use hi, Mr. or hey or hal. Those fancy abbreviations are meant for text, not for email. So be as professional, be as concise, and be as complete as possible when you're sending an email. That is after an event, yeah. But the same principles can apply if you're sending an email to somebody you have not met before, physically. Maybe you have talked on phone and you're just sending this email. So it's always good to always remember all those principles I've talked about, and then remind them where you got to their contact or why you're sending the email. You can say, following our conversation last week, please find an email following up on what we talked about. So this is ABCD. So list everything that you want that person to know or to talk about. For example, if you're inviting somebody for a STEM partnership, then you can tell them, following our conversation on phone, please find this and this and this and this. So if you haven't met that person physically, and if you have met them physically, then the rules still apply. Be courteous, be complete, be clear in your subject, punctuations should be correct, no abbreviations and stuff like that. Yeah. Are you still there? Kawira? Okay, seems like she's a little bit gone, but let's just continue, ladies. So another important thing to know is, how do you communicate in a networking event? That is something that is very, very important, because when you go to networking events, then the high chances that you're going to meet people that you have never met before, or people that you already know. So one thing that you need to know when you're going to a networking event is, it's very simple. Be approachable at all points, at all costs. Don't just go to a networking event and stand in your own corner and act as if you're not seeing all these other people, or that you're so unapproachable. So always act approachable at all points by being very friendly, reaching out to people you know or people you don't know and saying hi, and just starting a conversation from a very friendly point of view. I've realized that that is something that really helps when you are going to communicate in a networking event. The second thing that you need to know when you're going to a networking event is ask questions that make connections. So there are questions that people ask, and they are called rhetorical questions that really don't need answers. For example, oh, the economy has really been bad. Now, if I ask a question like that, you're not sure whether to answer me or to just keep quiet or to say yes or no, or you don't know whether it's a statement or a question in the first place. So the second thing, the most important thing you need to do is, when you're communicating, ask questions that create connections. For example, you can ask a question like, you have such a brilliant idea. What led to how did you come about with this brilliant idea? Which instances made you come up with this idea, or which gaps are you trying to solve in the marketplace? You understand? So when you ask questions that connect, and questions that how do you call them? Questions that inform, then it really becomes very important, and it really becomes very easy for somebody to network with you or to communicate with you. Okay. The third thing that is very important is, be polite, have a friendly face, smile, just be cheerful and jovial. I mean, it's just networking, it's not a death sentence. So it's very important that you go there and you relax and just become this approachable and happy and smiley person. And the other thing you need to know is, always make the conversation, if you want to gain a true connection, than it is about you. For example, you can ask questions like, tell me how you started this beautiful organization. How is it going for you? How was it like sourcing employees? What is your biggest achievement so far? What are some of the biggest lessons that you have learned? What did you wish you knew before you started your business? So when you ask questions such as this, you're making that person pour out all of them to you. So they feel like, wow, you're such an understanding, you're such a caring and a listening network. So they would want to know you more, they would want to connect with you more, they want to be friends with you more. So anytime you go to a networking event, always make sure that the person that you're connecting to, or the person that you're talking to, is feeling cared for, feeling appreciated, and feeling valued at all times. Okay. So another thing is also talk about yourself. Have something that is called an elevator pitch. If somebody asks you to tell them about yourselves in very short minutes, what are you going to say about yourself and about your business? So it's always good to have your it's called the networking or the elevator pitch ready, so that at any point you ask a question, then you can easily go on speaking without looking like you don't know what that person has asked you. And remember, the more networking events you attend, the more you become an expert over time, and the more you become more aware of what you need to do and what you don't need to do. Yeah. Kawira, back to you. Dennis? Maybe also you ladies can write for us in the chat box and just tell us what you think. If there's any other more questions you'd want to know, just leave your comment in the chat section, and we'll be sure to get back to you and maybe respond. Yeah, so let me just maybe we can also get engaging and tell us what you think communication is for you, what has worked for you, what's not working, what did you wish you know, what have you unlearned, or what are you relearning in this journey of communication and networking, and what does it feel like being in STEM and communicating? So give us your opinions in the chat box, and then Kawira and I will always be here to respond to you ladies. Yeah, Kawira, back to you.
Thank you so much, Yvonne. I'm sorry. Masaibu ya internet. The internet disconnected on my side. I'm so sorry. Thank you for continuing the conversation without me. Asante sana. What you discussed, it's a recorded session. I'm sure I'll be able to get through. Asante sana. Yeah.
Welcome. I've already told them on what they need to do when they're going for a networking event. So how do you need to?
Okay.
We need to be approachable, make it up, ask questions that create connections. We've talked about smiling and being yourself. We've talked about having an elevator pitch or having something that represents you or talks about you. So when I told them about asking questions that create connections, these are questions that you ask to know more about that person. So you can ask, for example, so tell me the breed, what is the beautiful idea behind this STEM, women in STEM? Why is it so important to going so far? What are some of the lessons you have learned? What are some of the achievements you have learned ever since you started doing this Zoom meeting? So if you ask somebody such questions, it makes them feel like you are a very interesting person and somebody who is more interested about them, so they will answer. So that is what we've talked about. And I've also invited them to tell us how they're finding it communicating in STEM. What have they learned in communication that they wish they knew before getting into STEM? So that is the match in case you missed.
Yeah. Thank you. And if I have one question, I think it's the last question to ask. If I am communicating to you and you sound so disinterested, how am I able to capture your attention? How should I be able to involve you and capture your attention? Because you talk to someone at times, you tell them about this, and then all along they are just so disinterested. How are you able to capture the attention of such a person? Yeah.
Okay, first of all, if somebody seems disinterested, is either the topic you're talking about is either irrelevant to them or they're not interested in that particular topic. Another thing that can make somebody not interested in a conversation is if they've had enough of you. You're talking too much about yourself and you're not asking them things about themselves. So they're like, Aish, you're so much about yourself. So they will just switch off. Another thing that makes people disinterested, if you are just plain in how you speak. So to answer your question, how can you make somebody who is uninterested to be interested? Number one, use stories or just say something that is very interesting to them. You may not know all the topics that they like and they don't like. So a story is something that it's always the best place to begin a conversation. So ask them, wow, by the way, tell me the beautiful story behind you starting STEM, Brenda. How was it starting STEM? Then now from there, they're telling you a story of their journey, how they started, why they started. So stories are always the best place to begin a conversation. And then secondly, make these conversations about them. Make sure you want to know more about that person, then make them feel like they're the only important person you came to meet in that event. So always ask them things like, how is it like running business in this town? How is it like running business as a young person or like as a lady? How is it like how was it like for you getting employees? And how was it like, just ask them, what was your experience getting your first client? So if you always make it about them, then they will be, honestly, they'll put their phones aside. They'll switch off from every other thing and want to give you their 100% attention because they know now that you care. Okay. And then another thing is always when you want somebody to be interested, be also interested. Be smiley. Don't be too rigid. Don't be too non-approachable. Appear approachable and funny and friendly. So but don't fake who you are not. So that is the most important. Don't fake that you're a very funny person, bubbly person. No. Just go there and be yourself, but look so approachable. So I think if you do all these things, then it will just make somebody automatically switch their interest to you. Because people are not usually boring. It's only the things sometimes you say that bore them. And if you're not talking about things that are making me know that you want to know more about me, then I will seem disinterested at all costs. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I think that's the last question that I had, because at times you try to talk, and someone doesn't still give you attention, and to really need to know how to draw their attention to you. Yeah.
That's nice. Yeah. So if you want to also draw somebody's attention, that is the part you also apply the 7 C's of communication. Be coherent, be concise. Don't start telling people stories from how you're born and how you grew up in just a short, in 5 minutes. So just make it very, go straight to the point, make it very short, and just, if you apply the 7 C's in all aspects of your life, if you apply the definition of the communication we talked about, if you apply all these things that we talked about, then you're going to find yourself having an easy time starting off your communication or improving it.
Yeah. And the first, I think also the first minute of conversation is very important. How you present yourself probably will give a person's attention to you, or probably they could ignore you. Yeah.
Yeah, so that is also the part where we apply the nonverbal communication. So don't just go there and stand rigid and look shy and look like you don't know where you are or what this event is all about. So your nonverbal communication is 65% of communication. So it's the largest thing that you can do. Fix yourself, fix your mood, fix your face, fix your body, fix your appearances, and conversation will already have started.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Sawa, sawa. Those are the questions that I had. Unless if you had something outside this, you can add something to us.
Well, the only thing I can say is that communication is something that you nurture. It's not something that you master. And from when we are still young, as young children, we are taught how to communicate, and we are still being taught how to communicate in our adult life. And even when we get old, communication is something that never goes off. So always be that person who is very inventive, learn new skills. There's so many courses you can take online on networking skills 101, how to email etiquette, all these nonverbal communication, how should you stand, all this information are so freely available on the internet. So make use of good of the internet, read and read and read. And I believe that as a woman in STEM or somebody who is just trying to master their communication, with constant practice, you'll become better. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And there's something you had told me you'd love to screen share. I don't know if you've been able to cover it or you'll still want to screen share.
I don't know if I'm able to share from my side. Maybe if the host can share it, because it was a video on communication. I'm not sure if they were able to share it, if I'm able to share it, because the other time I tried, it's still telling me only the host can. Yeah, so yeah, I think he's sharing. Oh, good. Yeah, we have it. Is it from my end or it doesn't have sound?
My end also doesn't have sound. Maybe the host can check the sound on the side he is.
Okay, basically what these principles are saying is that when you're sending a message, there's the linear where there's the person who is sending the source and code, and then the receiver. Then in between there is the message that you send. So in that linear communication, it can either be done through email, through phone, and stuff like that. There's less noise in that type of communication. You understand? It's straight from the sender to the receiver. You understand? Yeah, so it's like either through phone, email, or laptop. And then the other form of communication is okay, let's wait for him to move. So in this type of communication, there's very little distraction, very little distraction. That's the linear. And then the second type of the second method of communication, there's you and the recipient get to give each other feedback, like face to face. And then unlike the other one where there was so much noise in the environment, now this is called the interactive. Like the way I'm speaking to you, this is now the interactive communication. I'm speaking and you're giving me your opinion. And like if I was just to send you a recorded video on WhatsApp so that you play, there's no much interaction. So those are some of the modes of communication. So you pick the one that is most effective to you. If you want immediate feedback, then you can either choose one of the three, or if you just want to send something quick, you can always use a phone or an email or WhatsApp. Yeah. So that is basically what this video is explaining. So more on this can be found on, you can watch different YouTube videos on how to communicate and how to become effective in what you're saying. And with constant practice, I believe the ladies in STEM will become more confident in how they express themselves physically and even verbally. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I think it's less than a minute to complete. So basically what you said, it's the type of communication. That's what is inside now this video.
Yes. You see now, these different models of communication, there's one where there's no noise, and that is through the phone. You just send directly. And then the noise here is just distraction. And then the second one where they could be, the environment can affect how you respond. If you take somebody maybe to a hotel, a restaurant setup, and you want to discuss something very important, their feedback will be limited by the noise and the environment. And then we have the last step of communication, which is called interactive. Sorry, it's called transactional, where everything happens there and then. You get feedback, whether there's a noise in the environment or not, you get the actual feedback that you wanted. So that is what this video is trying to explain. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Yvonne. I've actually learned a lot about the 7 C's. I think those are things I'm going to apply from now onwards. There's a lot I've really learned how to attract. When I'm talking to people and they tend to ignore, I now know how to go about it. I know how to position my hands, how to the body language, to understand that the body actually communicates a lot. And all these are actually summarized on the importance of communication, importance of effective and good communication. The other party will listen to you. Thank you so much, Yvonne, for that amazing session. I'm so glad. And for the women in the STEM spaces, this I hope this has benefited all of us, and it should have, because this is actually what we need. So Yvonne, if someone wants to reach out to you or learn more, how can they reach out to you?
Good. They can follow me on Facebook, Yvonne Okeyo, Instagram, Yvonne Okeyo, LinkedIn, Yvonne Okeyo, or they can always send me an email, yvonneokeyo4@gmail.com. That is the quickest way they can find me. Facebook, Yvonne Okeyo, Instagram, Yvonne Okeyo, LinkedIn, Yvonne Okeyo, and email address, yvonneokeyo4@gmail.com. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Yvonne, for this session, and God bless you so much.
Thank you too for having me, and I wish you all the best. You're doing an amazing work, and all the women in STEM are doing amazing work, and I celebrate and I appreciate and I always admire women who are going out of their way to make their dreams come a reality. So good work, ladies, and yeah, I'm so happy for you guys.
Thank you so much, Yvonne, and continue being that powerful motivation speaker. We really need you, actually. You're the kind of people that we need.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, ladies.
Bye.